What's going on, guys? Vulkan here, and today we're talking about the things that V-Rising needs to add to help round out the experience. I mean, what they have today obviously is working, right? It's a great foundation, something that people really enjoy, something that they can build on. 1.5 million copies sold helps kind of clarify that, but there are some gaps that V-Rising has. So I want to go down my list of things that I'd love to see them add. Now, please keep in mind, this is my list, and these are things that are going to improve my experience, but yours might be different. You might value some different improvements outside of the ones that I've listed here. So make sure to comment below anything you want to see added because, hey, it might be something that didn't even dawn on me. So drop those things down there, but let's go ahead and get things started with number one, a map overlay. So as an action RPG gamer and someone who loves isometric looters, one of the first things I noticed was missing was an overlay map. Opening the full map while trying to navigate to a location, especially in a game like this, is a headache. You get burnt by the sun, you run through packs, you run through other players, you have mobs, there's all sorts of, I would say kind of dangers out, and you're trying to go from point A to point B on a horse, and it makes it a not great experience. It's pretty clunky, right? And this is something that I thought that would be there for early access, but it wasn't. So maybe this is part of the plan, and maybe this is to help create more excitement in PvP encounters. I'm not entirely sure. I just know that running and then stopping and then running and then stopping to open the map and figure out where you're going isn't exactly ideal. So I'm done harping on this one. It's simple, it's to the point. Overlay map, I think as an option, especially something you can toggle on or off, would be extremely helpful. So number two is kind of kicking off a two-parter here between 2 and 3, but that's a party system. So for a game that wants to promote group content for either PvP or PvE, it's really light on group systems. Right now, you can either create a clan and invite other people into it to do some fights, or you can tell their players to meet you at a point of interest and then kind of just gather together and go do whatever you want to do. So I think having a party tool would be great to quickly assemble a group of players to do something and then dissolve it afterwards. A clan works, but it's not working as designed, right? Because that allows people into your castle and they get extra permissions and things like that. Having a party system to quickly just group up, see someone else on the map temporarily, and then go do the thing you want to do. And then after that, you can leave the party and it removes them from the map. I think something like that would be very simple, but yet very, very helpful. Now, number 3, like I said, is kind of part 2 of this, and that is a looking for group system. So I would love to have an LFG system that lets players kind of post their group listings. That way they can find others to party up with. I mean, you could list farming routes, boss fights, PvP duels, castle raids, whatever you want out there. And players would be able to click on it, join a temporary party, dive in, and then be able to play with other folks. So let's move into number 4. So this one, I want to talk a little bit about Traversal. So right now you can teleport to waygates as long as you don't have any resources in your inventory, or you can use a cave passage to teleport with resources in your inventory. But unfortunately, those are pretty limited and they travel huge distances. So aiming isn't really a thing. They're more of like an escape route if you really think about it. So both of these I get, and I understand the value they bring to the table. However, I do think that there are some things that should be adjusted. Basic materials like lumber, plant fiber, ore, etc. These should all be able to be teleported to help shorten the distance you need to travel each time. However, refined materials, things like grave dust and scourge stones and key items like soul shards should not be able to be teleported. I think having this balance would ease the burden of traveling back and forth while still restricting players if they need to transport key items or important items, right? Because lumber, plant fiber, ore, those things are so plentiful that you don't really have players like going out and ganking in order to get plant fiber or lumber or silver ore. Like, it's just not something that you do. But if you were to, kill another player and get something like grave dust or scourge stones or even a soul shard or, something like that, that's when things get really interesting. So I think having kind of a limitation on the refined materials, but easing those limitations on basic materials like lumber would help players avoid burnout. So let's talk about skill depth. One of the things I was surprised to see missing from V-Rising was a depth to the skill system. So once you unlock a skill, that's it. And honestly, there it is. It's static. It is what it is forever and eternity. it would be really nice to see a way to invest into skills that you use often. Maybe you build like a proficiency with those skills, which then gives you a point to use that you can augment that skill down the road. Like let's take Chaos Volley, for example, right? You shoot 2 Chaos Bolts. It's something that a lot of players use. And let's say you build proficiency with that, you get a skill point, and you can invest it into 2 options. You know, one of them is adding another projectile to the volley where you have a total of 3 shots. Or maybe you take Ward of the Damned, for instance, and instead of having the ward on one side, it surrounds you on all sides. So that way it creates even more skeletons and gives you a greater chance to actually block shots and all of that fun stuff. So being able to kind of invest into those skills and augment those a little bit, I just feel like having some extra progression here would help players find an identity in the game in terms of builds and allow them to really carve out their own play style. Now, building on the previous point, we're talking about gear variety for number 6. So I would like to see more variety when it comes to gear set bonuses specifically. So right now, they're almost all exactly the same. And while it is a powerful bonus, you know, increasing some baseline stats, giving you an extra gear score point, it's just boring to see the same thing from start to end. And having some of these that are more focused on like sorcery or melee or tanking or support would just go a long way. You know, being able to go out, let's say you want to farm like the Dunley Bastion or whatever, to farm the Octavian area, and you're looking for like a militia set that would then increase your melee or your tanking ability, giving you more health, more resistance, more physical damage, more physical resist. Like all of those things I think would be really cool to see, and giving those areas their own sort of set that you can go out and farm, I think would go a long way for players. So just something to think about, but that's one thing that I noticed, and I was surprised that I didn't see something different. So number 7, let's talk about weapon effects. And this is kind of running with that gear variety point we just said last time. So I would like to see some of the end game weapons come with cool effects. Right now, they're just stat sticks, and I appreciate the boost that it gives me, but it really doesn't drive a certain type of behavior or a choice other than whether or not you like the skills that come with it. You could do something like, when you deal damage with the scythe, you have a 10% chance to reap, which steals health from the enemy. When you successfully stun an enemy with the mace, you gain a ward for 2 seconds, equal to half the damage dealt. You activate stealth with your slashers, and it gives you a small amount of health regen for 2 seconds, or a different buff for 2 seconds. I mean, you get the idea. There's a lot that they could do with these different weapon types that play into their identity that then could help create a wider variety of builds outside of just use the weapon, use the skills, and that's about it. So number 8, for our very last one, we're talking free build mode. So our last point is for castle building. I have 2 things I'd like to see added. One, like I just mentioned, a free build mode where you can enter a sandbox. Everything is free. It's outside the server, right? It's its own little like forge mode per se. And you can design a castle, and you can go through, put everything out there, really just make it look how you want it to look. And then you can save it as a blueprint. Then you can use that blueprint and import it into your world to build. So let's say you set your castle up, and it's just like this translucent sort of form that then you could go through and start putting things in once you get all the materials. I think it would be a cool concept and a cool thing to have. So being a creative person, I love to have free reign to just assemble whatever I want and give myself a goal to shoot towards in the live game, rather than, you know, drawing it out on a notepad or, you know, just feeling it out as I go. It'd be really cool if I could build it in a 3D space and then import it in there and have it just right there for you. I think this could also lead to some really cool ways for the community to show off their creations, not having to go out and farm a bunch of stuff. They could actually just let their kind of creativity rise to the occasion. So that's point number 1. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is being able to detach the camera when you're in build mode in the game. Right now, it's really kind of clunky, especially if you're trying to move items and you have a large castle. You have to click on an item, you have to drag it across the castle, and then you have to drop it, and it just doesn't work as well as I would have liked. I think being able to enter like a bird's eye view above your base, move things that way, would be much easier. I mean, it just, in terms of a smoother process, being able to look straight down on the thing that you're trying to move is a lot easier than trying to like click it and then move your character plus move the item. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, you could even use bat form to do this. if you want to like go off that camera and that view. It's already in the game. It's just let us use it. So guys, those are my top 8 things I would love to see added to the game this year. Will they? Maybe, maybe not, but who knows? But I do want to hear from all of you. What are some things you would like to see added to V-Rising, and what are some things that you think would make the game just better overall? Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you next time.